Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're going to be creating a fall watercolor wreath entirely in Procreate. So I'm going to zoom in here so you can kind of see what this looks like. So this is the final outcome of this tutorial. So we're going to put in all these details and all these fall doodles, and then we'll finish it off with some hand lettering that has a watercolor feel to it. And we're using a watercolor paper texture in the background, and all of these colors kind of blend with that background to make it even more believable that it's watercolor. So we're going to put in all these details, and this is the final outcome. So I'm going to create a new screen size document, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my brand new file created and I've already put in my watercolor paper texture. This watercolor paper texture is part of my Procreate lettering brush pack that I have. I'll leave a link in the video description to it. I'm also using a brush from that pack just because if you want that watercolor look, you really need to be using a watercolor brush. So that is one of my custom brushes. You can definitely use your own brush that you'd prefer for this, and you can grab your own watercolor paper texture as well. This is just what I am using for this tutorial. So jumping right in, the brush that I'm going to be using is this round paintbrush for illustration. That's part of that set that I mentioned. And this is the color palette that we're going to be using. I will make this available for free right in the video description. So just click there and you can download it for free and install it into Procreate. And then you can follow along exactly. So first, I think it would be helpful to just show you the types of doodles and illustrations that we're going to be integrating inside of this wreath. If you're not an illustrator, it's totally fine. This is very beginner friendly. Anybody will be able to do this. You don't need any experience with illustration at all. So we're going to be doing some simple leaves, we're going to be creating some berry branches, and then we're also going to be putting in some pine cones. So we're going to start really simple and then we'll move up to complex and then we'll add everything together into our final wreath outcome. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab just this red color. So I'm on an iPad Pro, and iPad Pro is the only iPad currently where you have pressure sensitivity. So when I press down on my stylus, I'm going to change the stroke weight, and that is really helpful for this. Otherwise you would just have to draw a shape and then fill it in. But with the pressure sensitivity settings, I can put little pressure, lots of pressure, and then little pressure to make realistic looking leaves. Let me make this brush a little bigger so you can see it better. So a little bit of pressure, lots of pressure, a little bit of pressure. Okay, I'm going to undo that. So that is how I'm going to be creating my simple leaves. Lots of pressure and little pressure. Start little, lots of pressure, and finish little. And you can create leaves that look like this. You can create fat little leaves. You can create long and skinny leaves. So there are a lot of options right here. And this brush already has that texture built into it, so it makes it really easy to achieve that watercolor look. Okay, so those are the leaves. And then for the branches, I'm just going to grab my gray right here. And branches are pretty simple. You're just going to draw a line and then draw another line and then connect other lines to it for a branch. There's no rhyme or reason here. You can just put them in randomly and then you have a branch. And then for the berries, I'm going to grab the blue and I'm just going to press down in different weights, and that will give me different size berries. And it's okay if they overlap one another. That's a pretty good thing because it shows off that watercolor look of the brush. And then all we have to do is grab our branch and we can connect these berries. And I just draw a few extra branches and connect them through my little cluster here. So that's a really simple berry branch. And then finally, I'm going to add in some pine cones. So I'm going to grab the brown right here. And the way that I doodle pine cones is I make little U shapes, so they look like this. And then you want to just add a few more. So that's 2, and add different weights. So there's 3, and then I'll do 4, and then I'll bring it back down. So 3, and then 2, and then I'll come in here and I will darken the bottom parts of a few of these. And then when you zoom out, you've got a little pine cone. You could put a little stem on it if you wanted to. So that's a pretty simple way to do a doodle style pine cone. Okay, so now that we've done our doodle practice, now we can start creating our wreaths. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab my gray because I'm going to put in all of my branches first. That way I have a foundation where all of my leaves are going to go, where my pine cones are going to go, and then I can also add in those berry branches as well. So I'm going to first head over to my settings. So hit the wrench and then choose canvas and then tap this drawing guide. So toggle it over and you can see we've got a small grid that shows up, and then hit edit drawing guide. And I'm going to up this all the way to the max. So all I have is a hairline guideline down the center vertically and horizontally. I'm going to make this a little darker. So I'm going to slide my color up here so you can see it better. And I'm going to make it a little thicker so you can see it really well. And then I'm going to hit done. And now on a brand new layer, you can see there's my paper texture. I'm going to just give myself a template. So I'm going to rename this circle template. So we'll use this template to put all of our elements on top of, and then at the very end, we'll turn it off. So this is just a guide to keep our wreath looking like a wreath so it stays circular. Sometimes if you don't follow a guide, it can get pretty wonky and misshapen. So I love using a template for this, and Procreate makes it really easy. So I've got my gray color right here, and I'm just going to draw a circle, and I'm not going to make the circle really big. It's actually going to be pretty medium size. That way I can fit elements above it and beneath it and still have room for my text in the center. So I'm just going to draw a circle, and when I finish drawing a circle, I'm just going to stop and hold, and you can see it snaps into a shape when I don't lift the stylus up right away. And then I can hit Edit Shape and choose Circle, and that will pop it into a circle. Now I'm going to select it by hitting this arrow icon up here. And now I have nodes. You can see I've got nodes on the left and right side. I've got nodes on the top and bottom. Now I can move this to align it with my guides. So I want to try and line it up as perfectly as I can. You can see I've got magnetics turned on right here, so it kind of snaps it. You can see that blue line appearing, letting me know that I'm snapping it. And I just want to make sure my nodes look good. Maybe tap this down. This is actually feeling a little large to me, so I'm going to reduce the size a little bit so I've got more room for my elements. Okay. So that looks pretty centered now. Now I've got a really good template to work off of for all of the pieces that are going to be a part of my wreath. So now I can come over here to my circle template. I'm going to reduce the opacity so I can hardly see it because I want to see all the elements that I'm drawing much better than just my template. So that's down to about 23% opacity, and now we're good to go. I'm also going to change the blend mode of this to multiply just to make it a little bit darker. Whenever you choose a multiply blend mode, whatever's on your layer is going to blend with whatever's underneath it. In this case, it's the watercolor paper texture, and it's going to interact with whatever's beneath it in a darker way. So whenever you choose multiply, whatever's on your layer will appear darker automatically. So we're going to create a new layer right above our template, and we're going to call this branches. So now we need to adjust the settings for our branches layer, and this will allow us to make our wreath really fast by replicating whatever we do in one quadrant in all the other quadrants. So I'm going to hit the wrench again, come to my canvas section, and then hit Edit Drawing Guide again. And this time we're going to come over here and tap on Symmetry, turn on Rotational Symmetry, and select Quadrant. We've got the hairlines again. I'm going to make these darker so we can see them really well and make them a little thicker. Okay, and now I'm going to hit done. Now whatever we draw in this layer will be repeated in all the other quadrants. So if I doodle here, you can see it appears in the other quadrants. So this will speed up our branches. I'm going to draw a branch like this. Let's change the blend mode to multiply just to make this a little darker. And then I can draw my other branches. So I'm just going to do these basic branches that kind of come off from one another. Okay, and you can see that pops them all the way in the other quadrants. And now I can make these a little more interesting because it's really basic right now. So I can add in some more branches to my branches. Okay, so just like that, we've got branches that go all the way around our wreath. If you ever want to preview your final outcome at any point in time, all you want to do is uncheck your circle template, and that will disable the visibility of what you have. So that's looking really good. Now we can add berries to our branches. So I'm going to create a new layer right above the branches and label this berries. And in order to repeat our elements on this one, because if we draw it right now, you can see it's only going to appear in this one quadrant. To make it appear in all the other quadrants without having to go back to your wrench and then turn on your symmetry, all you have to do is tap on the layer's thumbnail and choose Drawing Assist. So when you do that, it will automatically take on whatever your previous settings were for your layer before that. So now if I draw here, it repeats it in my other quadrants. So I'm good to go with my berries. So I'm going to select my blue. I'm going to change the blend mode of this to multiply. And now I'm going to put in some dots randomly on some of my branches. And then I'll come back and connect these little berries to that branch. Okay, so I've left some branches empty and others I've put a bunch of berries on there. I just don't want to overdo it with my berries. And these berries seem a little darker than the others. So I'm going to erase these and redo these ones. And now we can go in and connect these berries to that branch. So I'm going to come back to my gray. I'm going to come back to my branches layer and then just connect these so it looks a little more realistic. I'm going to reduce the size of this since these are small branches. So I'm just coming in here and connecting a few of them just to let your eye know that these are actually connected to the branch instead of just sitting and floating on top of them. Okay, I've got all of my little branches on there, and now I can move on to my leaves. So I'm going to do the exact same thing that we did before, create a new layer up on top, and I'm going to label this Leaves 1. I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. I'm going to tap on the layer thumbnail and choose Drawing Assist. That way whatever I draw here gets repeated in my other quadrants. And now I'm going to select my red, and I'm going to increase the size of my brush up to about 12 to 13%. And then I can start putting some leaves on these branches. Okay, I've got all my red leaves on here now. You can see I left a lot of space between them because I'm going to be adding in additional colors. So I wanted to make sure I left enough space for all the additional colors that I'm going to be putting in there. So let's get a preview of what our wreath is looking like. I'm just going to turn off the circle template, and that's looking really good so far. So let's create a new layer above our Leaves 1 layer, label this Leaves 2, change the blend mode to multiply, tap on the layer thumbnail. You don't want to forget to do this. So select Drawing Assist, and now everything will be repeated. And now we're going to move to the next color, which is this orange. So I'm going to speed up the video and just repeat this process. I have two other colors after the orange to do. We're just going to be filling in all these gaps with the different color leaves, trying to make it feel pretty balanced with the quantity of all the different colors of leaves. So I'm going to run through, do the orange, this kind of peach color, and this pink color. Same exact settings, multiply blend mode, make sure your Drawing Assist is on, put them on brand new layers, and once that's done, I will be right back. Okay, so we've got all of our leaves in, we've got our branches and our berries. The last thing we need to add in are our pine cones. So I'm going to create a new layer up at the top and label this Pine Cones. Change the blend mode to multiply, activate our Drawing Assist, and then we're going to choose the brown color, and I'm just going to come in here and kind of wherever my gaps are, like right here's a gap, here's a gap, here's a gap, that's where I'm going to put my pine cones. Okay, now that we have our pine cones all in there, the only thing we have left to do is to add in our hand lettering. So I'm going to create a new layer right up at the top and call this lettering. Change the blend mode to multiply, and we don't want this to repeat in the other quadrants, so we're perfectly fine leaving it as it is. I'm going to use my darkest red color for this, and let's increase the size to about 18%. Okay, so I'm just going to write out the word autumn. Okay, and I'm just going to select it and center it a bit more so I know it's right in the middle, and those guidelines really help with that. And that looks good. All right, so now I just need to turn off my guide. So I'm going to go to my wrench, go to my canvas section, and then just turn off drawing guide. Okay, and once your guides are turned off, now all we need to do is turn off that final template layer that's still hanging out back there. We don't want to forget to get rid of that, otherwise it kind of spoils the look a little bit having a circle back there. So let's turn that off. So come to your layers, find your circle template and just turn off the visibility, or you can just delete it completely. So now we can preview what this looks like, and it's nice and clean, and we don't have any weird wonky shapes. It looks like a wreath. So that's how to create a fall watercolor wreath entirely in Procreate, and actually only using one brush as well. Once again, I'll leave the link to my watercolor lettering brush set, which also includes this paper texture. The paper texture that I used for this one is the medium tooth texture that's part of that pack, and I will leave a link to this color palette so you can download the color palette and use it exactly. I will also leave a link to my free online course called Procreate for Beginners. If you're just diving into Procreate and want to learn the basics and some advanced techniques as well, check out that course. It's 100% free and comes with some free brushes too. So I'll leave that link in the video description. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new Procreate tutorials in the future. You can find all of my past tutorials and pick up some design freebies and Procreate freebies over on my site, every-tuesday.com. If you decide to try this out and post it to Instagram, I would love it if you tag me. My handle is every Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.